I'm very honored to be here. I'm honored that so many people want to listen to what I have to say. I'm very honored for having used my term, the climate knowledge crisis, as a name for an international conference. I had certainly not expected that. I simply worked a little with how to make a book title stand out and be different from the 50 or 100 other books on climate in Norwegian alone. So my talk is how climate rhetoric has become a substitute for science. First, only a few texts in Norwegian, then the rest will be in English. In Journalisten, in 2007, forskere som utfordrer den rådende konsensus i klimasaken, klager over ensidig mediedekning og refuserte aviskronikker. Forfatter av den nye boka, Kampen om klimaet, Onar Aam, sønn til en i forsamlingen, tror norske medier har bestemt seg for at debatten er over, og så kommer det som jeg vil legge merke til. Here we can see climate propaganda in the making. Skal vi se. We see that I will read this in Norwegian first and then in English. På Meteorologisk institutt sitter klimaforsker Rasmus Benestad. Han mener mediedekning av klimaendringene lider av andre svakheter. Nylig anklaget han nettavisen forskning.no for å opptre ukritisk overfor klimaskeptikerne og formidle desinformasjon. 2007, desinformasjon, som er egnet til å så tvil om klimaendringene. Benestad føler han som forsker må si fra, slik at mediene formidler best mulig kunnskap om klimaforskningen. Det er en sympatisk tanke at minoriteten skal få komme til ordet. Det er viktig i et demokrati, men vitenskapen fungerer ikke slik. Der er det kvalitet som teller. Målet er å gi samfunnet den beste kunnskapen. Og nok en overskrift. Ikke klimaforskere. Skeptikerne er som regel ikke klimaforskere, men solforskere, geologer eller økonomer. Og at de ofte tar opp temaer som klimaforskerne føler seg ferdig med, sier Benestad. So, here is a climate researcher accuses the media, they are uncritical, they are letting climate skeptics in, they are sowing doubt, science is no democracy, and they are no climate researchers. The themes are finished. You see, I'm trying. Where do I point?
Jeg mente bare at du skal bruke den laserpointeren på den, så ikke du tar med deg ledningen der.
Ja, men det gjør jeg ikke. Men,
Okay. Ja, men da kan du bare legge den vekk.
Ja, det jeg prøvde var å skifte side. De må peke der. Ok.
Hvis det ikke virker, så hjelper Tormod deg.
Der. So this is the supreme domination technique. Here we have one uncritical statement to be examined. Klimaforskeren legger til grunn at ingen rapport er gjennomgått mer kritisk enn nettopp FNs klimarapport. No report more critically examined than the IPCC report. Is it true? Vitenskap handler ikke om hva som er mest sant. Vi snakker om hva som er mest overbevisende, og vitenskapelig konsensus er per definisjon mest overbevisende. Scientific consensus is most convincing. This is a domination technique, suppressing criticism. Benestad said, and now we are making a text analysis, no report has ever been more carefully examined. There is consensus about it. It is most convincing. We have peer review in practice. The passages, which I will now show, are part of Assessment Report 2, Chapter 10, which is 38 pages. And it was authored by 23 scientists, professors, etc., and 2 review editors. So each person has authored in this chapter, on average, 1.65 pages, and the peer review is probably thousands of comments. So let's see. This is 1062 about the Himalayan glaciers. I shall not read all of this here, but you will see after a while. There are 9 statements. So let's go into them. The first finding, something wrong with size. Statement 1, Himalayas glaciers covered 30,000 square kilometers, 3 million hectares. Statement 8, Himalayas glaciers covered 500,000 square kilometers. There obviously must be something wrong here. So find the source. The source, we examine the source. World Wildlife Fund 2005 is found in the reference list at page 505. An overview of glaciers, glacier retreat and subsequent impact in Nepal, India and China. World Wildlife Fund, Nepal program, 79 pages. Find it on the internet. So I found it and downloaded it. There are no 500,000 kilometers in WWF 2005. So our statement 8 has been given as reference statement number 9, but there is no such number in the report. So we examine the source further. Statements 6 and 7 are found at page 29. In 1999, a report by the Working Group on Himalayan Glaciology, WGHG, of the International Commission for Snow and Ice, ICSI. Glaciers in the Himalayas are receding faster than in any other part of the world, and if the present rate continues, the livelihood, not likelihood, but livelihood, I think it's because of Indians. The livelihood of them disappearing by the year 2035 is very high. It refers to another report, a report, but there is no reference to this WGHG report in the reference list in WWF 2005. So, no report, no reference. So, we now search for the phrase ICSY. It's found on page 2. And there we discover New Scientist magazine had an article, Flooded Out, Retreating Glaciers Spell Disaster. In their June 5, 1999 issue, it quoted Professor Syed Hasnes, chairman of ICSI, who said that most of the glaciers in the Himalayan region will vanish within 40 years as a result of global warming. But there is no reference to the ICSI report from 1999, either in WWF 2005. There is only a reference to the New Scientist magazine. So, what do? We don't find these reports. So, let's continue. So, we examine statement 1, 3 million hectares in the WWF report. We find that on page 36, there are 33,200 square kilometers in 1971. On page 44, we find another from 1999, 8,000 glaciers, 34,659 square kilometers. So the third finding is that the glaciers grew from 1971 to 1999, contradicting statement number 6. And the fourth finding, statement 4, states that there are 15,000 glaciers in Himalaya, but the reference gives the number 18,065. So is this an exact quote? Well, I doubt it. Later on, you will see that they had not read the WWF report at all. Because now we examine the source for the source. New Scientist, 1999, and here a new study due to be presented in July, blah, blah, predicts that most of the glaciers in the region will vanish within 40 years as a result of global warming. All the glaciers in the Middle Himalayas are retreating, says Syed Hasnes again. The study indicates that all the glaciers in the central and eastern Himalayas could disappear by 2035 at their present rate of decline. But where is the source? So let's find the source. So far, the ICSI report referred to in the WWF report is only mentioned in a New Scientist interview. There is no reference. Still, the glaciers may disappear in 2035. However, a reference from 2012 behind the paywall tells that the ICSI report was never published. And here you can see Hasnes 1999 report on Himalayan glaciology, unpublished minutes. So they were unpublished, and that's why they are not referred to in the New Scientist and the WWF 2005 and the IPCC report. So the New Scientist article, I had to search a little to find that it was based on an article in the journal Down to Earth from April 1999. And the New Scientist article carried no own research but was still given as source in the WWF report. So, examine the source of the source of the source. Down to Earth. Glaciers in the Himalaya are receding faster than in any other part of the world, blah, 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 disappearing by the year 2035 is very high. ICSI, Syed Hasnes, we here learn that he is also called Iqbal. WGHG, the glacier will be decaying at rapid catastrophic rates. Its total area will shrink from the present 500,000 to 100,000 square kilometers by the year 2035. Says former ICSI President V.M. Kotlyakov in the report Variations of Snow and Ice in the Past and Present on a Global and Regional Scale. So here we find another report. So far, still the glaciers will disappear by 2035. Here we find the numbers of Statement 8, 500,000 and 100,000, with a new reference to the report by some V.M. Kotlyakov. Let us also note from this article, need for monitoring. In India, there is a very poor database on glaciers. Poor database. They shall disappear, but they have poor data. On the other hand, excellent studies have been conducted on Nepal's glaciers, so we presume their conclusions would also be applicable for glaciers in our country, says Hasnes. Hasnes is quite sure on the receding glaciers we still see, with very poor data. So what does this say about IPCC? But there is more. The fifth finding, the IPCC editors have included a non-referred source. In Down to Earth, what we read here, and I snipped, is actually what is used almost word by word in the IPCC report. And not WWF 2005, because they state the same thing much more clumsily. I didn't take time to snip out from the WWF report. So here we find a non-referred source. But I have included this, the more clumsy statement. But let us hope that these 5,218 glaciers in the Himalayas from Puri 1994, let's hope they are found in India, because the number differs from the 15,000 and the 18,065 given elsewhere. And this source is VMM Puri Glacier Inventory, Geological Survey of India, unpublished lecture notes. Foundation course in glaciology. So I think this is fun. You're free to laugh, even though it is peer-reviewed science. So we have to examine the source of the source of the source of the source, and go to Kotlyakov, 1996. This report was not searchable, so I had to read all of it. And on page 66, at last, we can read, the extrapolar glaciation of the Earth will be decaying at rapid catastrophic rates. Its total area will shrink from 500,000 to 100,000. Ah, there we have a statement, finally, in the source of the source of the source of the source. By the year 2350. Peer review. The IPCC report is the most scrutinized ever. Ha. So glaciers will survive only in the mountains of inner Alaska, etc., etc. This is because the 500,000 are the extrapolar glaciation that is not on the south and north pole, but elsewhere. So obviously the number must be much larger than the glaciers in Himalaya. So it was not the glaciers of Himalaya, as in statement 8, but all non-polar glaciers that covered 500,000 kilometers and are going to shrink to 100,000. The authors of the IPCC report have simply misunderstood this, or they have simply not cared. It's a little bit careless, don't you think? Certainly they would not have been, they would have been given an F if they had taken my course at the university. So, seventh finding, 2350, the year when 20% of the glaciers should be left was 2350. So the authors, the review editors, the commentators, thousands of them, of the IPCC report have accepted the year as 2035 without any critical sense at all. And as I say, each author has a responsibility for 1.65 page, for which they have probably been paid 2-3 years' salary. So they have probably, the author of this passage has spent half a year on collecting together such bullshit. So eighth finding, there is no disappearance. The likelihood that the glaciers may disappear completely is not treated by Kotlyakov. It's simply something that this Hasnes opinionated without any backing. What does this say about the IPCC report? So conclusion, IPCC presented a hodgepodge. Statement 1 was sourced onto Earth, but inaccurate statement, not WWF 2005. Statement 2, sourced onto Earth. I've shown also where it's taken from. Statement 3, Himalayan glacial snowfields sourced down to Earth. Statement 4, 15,000 Himalayan glaciers sourced down to Earth. The countries here, the list of countries was added by the editor of the IPCC report. Statement 5, sourced down to Earth. Statement 6, sourced down to Earth, quoting the unpublished ICSI report, but they are not taking into account that the glaciers are badly monitored. So how can they know what they actually say? What is the backing of it? And the source gives numbers showing that the glaciers are growing. They are not shrinking, they are growing. Statement 7, if the present rate continues in 2035, source down to Earth, quoting Kotlyakov. You can see here as 2350. Second part, taken from quote from Hasnes, who opinionates. Because Kotlyakov doesn't state that they will disappear. Hasnes added it. And statement 8, total area, sourced down to Earth, quoting Kotlyakov wrongly. He doesn't speak about Himalaya, uses the year 2350. So statement 9, which was the reference, minimally has been taken directly from the given source. So IPCC fails on every count. So they say it has been thoroughly examined. No, it fails abysmally. Nothing of it can be trusted, except the superficial facts. For instance, that Himalaya has got some glaciers. I think we can be sure of that. Its main conclusions are not only wrong, but either misunderstood, remembered wrongly, or even made up. Its use of sources is simply abysmal. It's untrue that no report has been more critically examined than the IPCC report. It is simply an outright lie. Scientific consensus is definitely not most convincing. So the 2035 statement caused a scandal in 2007. The IPCC, including its chairman, vehemently rejected all criticism. It must be like that. Reluctantly, they accepted this error, that it was an error, in 2010. The IPCC report has not been corrected since. You can look up the report today and it will still tell you that the glaciers will disappear in 2035. So therefore, the IPCC report can only be viewed as pure propaganda. They have absolutely no authority. They are Bosch. You could ask some 13-year-olds in a Norwegian school to make the same statements or try to make statements about the same things. They could not be worse. So it's calculated propaganda, all of it. We can read in The Guardian in 2019, we recently reviewed the language used in our coverage of the environment and the terms we use reflect the phenomena that we describe in an accurate enough way. We want to ensure that we are being scientifically precise while also communicating clearly with readers on this very important issue. The phrase climate change, for example, sounds rather passive and gentle, when what scientists are talking about is a catastrophe for humanity. I'm quoting from the Guardian, from their guidelines. Increasingly, climate scientists and organizations from the United Nations to the Met Office are changing their terminology and using stronger language to describe the situation we're in. That's why we want to change the terms now used as follows. Use climate inertiacy, crisis or breakdown instead of climate change. Use global heating instead of global warming. Use climate science denier or climate denier instead of climate skeptic. So I must ask, were they that desperate already in 2019?
Yeah.
The pure desperation. So in order to recognize propaganda, you should always look for these things, uncertain or vague terms that people can put whatever they imagine into, such as climate change, emissions, man-made warming, earlier than expected, extreme, sustainable, green. All of these terms are vague. You can put whatever you wish, whatever you feel into them. Propaganda is often unrelated terms that people can imagine are related, such as wildfires. You make a relation to climate. Cow farts, as if cow farting has something to do with climate. Eating meat, heat wave, 97%. And then you have unrelated phenomena that are used as proof, such as cooling towers with water vapor, colored dark brown. They do that. White water vapor, colored dark brown, giving the impression of man-made dangerous emissions, or dying polar bears, or whatever. Then you have the unknown authorities. This is important because the unknown authorities that people regard as truth witnesses, such as in this formula, put in something scary may happen soon, say scientists. Always in plural. Scientist says, and then some scary thing. So this is a formula for propaganda. And they never name the scientists, although sometimes they name a certain scientist who says this and that in an interview. And it's too bad because it can then be found out. And you can point on the scientist's error. So they don't want it. Vague scientific terms that people don't understand at all, like climate sensitivity, it's made up. Greenhouse effect, it's made up. Tipping point, it's made up. The precautionary principle, bullshit. That sounds important on a large scale. It sounds so important. How can you dare to doubt? And then you have also something. All these things are presented in my book so that you can read chapters on these things. Lying by presenting truth, but not the context, such as the country is warming twice as fast as the world. Oh yes, that's true. And why is it true? Because they are not adding that the ocean is part of the world. And ocean is heating not as fast as land. So that's how they can make a lie out of a truth. Apocalyptic prophecies like we only have 0, 1, 10, 15 years to save, they are in general not true. And then you have appeal to emotions such as our children, the rich versus the poor, inequalities, and in short, everything that makes the reader listener assume something bad. All of these terms are utilized to make you assume something, to gather up your own feelings about it. So assumptions, the 1.5 degree goal, for instance. Goal for whom? What about the original 2 degree goal? I'm treating this in the book. It has never been as hot before. Note the use of never. It is, of course, a lie. Every time. The climate has been stable for so and so long. They say this, but it's pretty undocumented that that is true. And the very best propaganda is the one that makes people put their own opinion into it. That's why Obama succeeded with the bland phrase, yes, we can. Because people can always think of something that we can make better. And Trump with the equally bland phrase, make America great again. It's suggestive of people's imaginations because everyone can imagine something that needs something to be done about. So it's an appeal to your imagination. So the main assumption is the hockey stick splice. Is Marilyn Monroe a mermaid? Or is this simply a splice of 2 different pictures? Like the hockey stick, it is a splice of 2 graphic figures. So they are lying. They are showing you something that you shall assume is real, but it isn't. So that's all I have to say about the hockey stick. It is as serious as this. There is nothing more to say. So if people say to me, oh, you know about the hockey stick? Yes, then Marilyn Monroe was a mermaid. Period. And then the science of 97%. 97% of research points to human activity as a contributor. That's a quote. But contributor to what? I mean, man-made CO2 as a contributor to a greener planet. Yeah, there is 100% agreement on that. Not 97. Man-made destruction of the environment as a contributor to effects on climate, 100% agreement. Man-made climate propaganda as contributor to climate religious measures with no root in science, 100% agreement. Every time you see that there is 97% agreement on something, you can easily conclude that this is a made-up number made to make an impression. 100% can too easily be disproved, so you can't use 100%. 99% sounds like too much. It sounds made up, like 99.99%. It's just posh. 98%, a bit too much. 96% is too charged, as it is the alcohol content of moonshine. So actually 96% sounds funny to us. So you can't use 96. 95%, oh, that's too accurate. 94%, oh, it's just ridiculous. 94% of scientists agree. No, 97 is perfect. And peer-reviewed research has concluded that this is because 97 is a prime number, with all the suggestive mystery dwelling on the primes. So now you actually learned something. What actually is climate propaganda? It's free of cycles, feedback systems, and falsification of hypotheses. It's free of reason. It's obviously manufactured to intimidate. You come here and come here, as they say in Norway. And better yet, it makes such unqualified claims that most people can imagine their own fantasies into the predictions. So if one examines climate science as presented in the climate report, when it actually makes sense, as it sometimes, but not always does, one finds a completely different and rather fragmented picture of the various branches of science, where it oozes uncertainty. Yes, every single thing in the report is indicated with the probability of whether it might happen or not. It is most likely that, it is, etc., etc. Likely that, and likely means so and so and so. So try telling your loved one that you are 90%, 97% likely to love her or him, and look at the results. Oh, darling, do you love me? Oh, yes. Are you certain? Yes, I'm 97% certain. In my opinion, and I hope in every reasonable person, climate propaganda is simply outrageously, stupidly produced. And that's why it is so easy to look through it. Har ikke så mye igjen. Okay, great. So propaganda production comes from, for example, the Columbia Journalism Review, covering climate now. They coordinate more than 350 media actors and expect to reach more than 1 billion readers. They provide a coordinated horror campaign with supplies for every single day, especially before large climate summits. Here you will find, etc. You can only imagine where NTB, the Norwegian News Bureau, material comes from and is spread in this country. It's produced by stupid people. Oh, sorry. So this is their website, covering climate now, the 89% project. They say that 89%, between 80 and 89% of the world's people want their governments to be doing more to address climate change, which is, of course, bosh. And I could see here one article, Are Americans Afraid of Climate Change? CNN says no, but most news coverage hasn't made the danger clear. Oh yes, they have. All the time. So are we succeeding? Here, CNN ran a story, inadvertently underscore the fact that most journalism is still not getting across the full truth about climate change. This is important for us, especially Matthias. Do you see? They are. Harry Enton, CNN's polling analyst, displayed Gallup data showing that 40% of Americans are greatly worried about climate change. But this 40% is the exact same percentage as were worried back in 2000. Despite everything we see today on our television screens or computer screens, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the flooding. So Americans aren't afraid of climate change, Enton concluded. Climate activists have not successfully made the case to the American people. Perhaps not, but neither have most journalists. So the extreme weather events have gotten extensive news coverage, but most of that coverage did not make the climate connection. Etc. You can see one survey say that only 29% of Americans are very worried about climate change, a remarkably low number. So this reflects climate change's lack of salience for most Americans. So what to do when people don't believe you? Then they resort to calling us flat earth proponents. All right then. Conspiracy theorists, right-wing or even right-wing extremists, fascists, paid for by the oil industry. So dismiss persons using these words automatically. You can dismiss them. They don't have any arguments. So they are just feeling. So the research in Norway, you're not worried at all. There was an editor of Nettavisen. He wrote about what he thought was absolutely terrible here only a few months ago. The climate crisis have no place at the Norwegian election. They are not talking about the climate crisis. The editor, Gunnar Stavrum, said in an article. And so he had this poll. How do you look at climate change? Not at all worried. 56%, 5,300 votes. And this is in Nettavisen, who only prints climate propaganda. I'm a little worried, but I think it will end up well. 21%. I'm very worried, 13%. I'm so worried, I want more climate measures, 11%. I mean, I can remember when the media was so worried because 10% of the Norwegian population didn't believe in climate change. I can believe when the number was 15, when the number became 20, when the number became 25. A few years ago, it was 33%. And I was among them in Nationen, for instance. I was accused of being one of the reasons why Norwegians didn't believe in climate change. And if you are looking at Google, you will find that the first thing that is entered is from the Reddit website. Why does the climate denier Geir Hasnes so often appear in media? You can look me up on Google and you will find that. So we have already won the population. So this is my book. Read it, because it's the only book I know about that is actually joking, telling good stories, and makes you laugh while you read and learn about climate. Thank you for your attention.